Hello, everyone. How are you all doing? This is another episode of Yesshift, starring yours truly. For this episode, it's just me, Steven Schinder, the son of the father-son team. Um, yeah, like if you haven't been listening for a while, there have been some episodes where, because of scheduling, I have to come on and talk about some news stuff just to make sure it all gets out to you in a timely fashion. And there is some news stuff that has come out recently. In fact, we're in the midst of some stuff going on. Prague stock is going on as this is being broadcast. Tonight, Sunday the 8th, Patrick Moraz plays at Prague stock. People can find tickets to the live stream on Stage It if they're not there in person. So that should be fun. But anyway, this is not a news episode. This is something that's kind of been on my mind since it's the 10th anniversary. So we're talking Ponder the Mystery. And no, not the band Mystery that Benoit David used to be in, although they're also performing at Prague Stock today at 1 p.m. Pacific, I believe, 4 p.m. Eastern. I got my online ticket to that live stream as well. So, yeah, and because this isn't a news episode, I came up with a sub series name for this, Yesshift Stevenstallment. I don't know, I just thought it was kind of unique, kind of works for stuff like this where it's not a news desk edition. It's focused on this William Shatner album, Ponder the Mystery. So, yeah, it came out October 8th, 2013, and recently got remixed and re released as Ponder the Mystery Revisited. So, yeah, the remix was done by, I'm just pulling up the name here, Jurgen Angler. So that, yeah, the remix came out back in August, I believe 18th and 25th, depending on which format it was. And both versions came from Cleopatra Records, and yeah, featuring some Yesmen on there. Um, for those who, well, I'm curious, like, have you listened to the original? Have you listened to the revisited version? What are your thoughts? Did you come in as a prog rock fan or a Star Trek fan? Like, how did that happen? But yeah, there are some differences on the revisited version. Namely, the biggest difference seems to be the removal of some of Billy Sherwood's vocals, or pretty much all of his vocals. He uh, wrote the music, produced the album, and on the original, his voice is very prominent. He also played lead guitar, and he's not the only Yes Man who was involved. Rick Wakeman was on the song Change, and you also got Tony Kaye in the mix. Shatner joined Circa for three different shows back in October 2013. So yeah, you can see some video clips of at least one of the shows. There are like a few clips up on YouTube. And I saw like a behind the scenes thing where Shatner was being interviewed, and you could see a bit of the rehearsal footage. You could see Billy and also Tony Kaye there, and the Circa band. So, taking a step back, um, I'm both a prog rock fan and a Star Trek fan. My grandpa on my dad's side, he was an original series guy, and because of him, my dad also got interested in Star Trek. And when me and my brother were kids, I remember we at least watched the original series movies. I don't have many memories of watching most of them, but when I was like maybe 4 or maybe earlier, I do remember seeing bits of The Voyage Home. But it wasn't until the early 2010s that I became a fan of Star Trek. And, it goes without saying that Shatner is a huge part of that Star Trek legacy, obviously. So I started watching the original series. I watched the original unaired pilot, The Cage, on New Year's Eve at the end of 2011, and then throughout 2012 and maybe a little bit into 2013, I watched the original series sporadically and then got into the next generation. And my brother's Star Trek interest had reignited thanks to the 2009 reboot movie, and so we watched Star Trek Into Darkness that year, 2013. At the time, I really enjoyed it, but in hindsight, I'm like, yeah, that movie had lots of issues. Like, my opinion on that one has gone down over time, definitely. But yeah, from 2013 to early 2014 is when I really got into it. I was like very much the Netflix generation when it came to Star Trek. I had watched the animated series probably prior to seeing that second reboot movie, and then Star TNG sort of around that time, and then I watched all the rest up until the last aired one at the time, Enterprise. So this album, Ponder the Mystery, it came out when I was in the midst of my Star Trek series exploration, exploring all the different series at the time. And I'm trying to remember, like, I don't think I listened to it that long after it came out. It had to have been before me and my family moved to the next apartment that we lived in, which that would have been April 2014. Because I remember watching this documentary, The Captains, before the move. It was on Netflix. It was about William Shatner interviewing the different captains of Star Trek up to that point. And there's an episode focused on mainly himself, from what I recall. And he talked about some of his other endeavors outside of acting and how he likes doing spoken word. And he mentioned working with Billy Sherwood and hearing him say Billy's name and seeing him and Billy together in that documentary is kind of surreal, like these two Bills coming together. So I'm pretty sure I listened to Ponder the Mystery not too long before watching that documentary. So maybe it was late 2013 or at the latest early 2014. But this is something that has stuck with me. And like also while we're talking about Star Trek, this is a little tangent. I know recently I sort of talked about the similarities between Star Wars fandom and ES fandom. I remember when Star Trek returned to television, well, in a sense, via the streaming platform, the new show Star Trek Discovery. That was 6 years ago now. Wow, when that began. It premiered around the same time that a Star Trek pastiche show, The Orville, started. And I remember there was a lot of because they're airing alongside each other, and everyone was arguing, well, this is true Trek, and that's not Trek. And it was at the same time that Yes and Yes featuring ARW were touring. ARW had the name change by this point, so I could not help but make those comparisons at the time. And like stuff like that is still happening, and people make it Yes versus John Anderson versus Trevor Rabin versus Steve Howe, and I'm just like, people, I am tired. Let people enjoy things without having to put down the other thing. Like, it's so overblown, overdone, and it's just, yeah. So uh all that is to say that lots of fandoms are alike in some senses. But anyway, getting back to Ponder the Mystery, I know William Shatner's way of speaking, especially like in his acting, um, has become kind of a meme to some people. Like, he's definitely the iconic, the definitive Captain Kirk. Lots of people would agree, but his way of speaking, like, people, it has really entered the zeitgeist as this pop culture thing that some people like to poke fun at. So hearing the spoken word, there's some people who are not that into his style, I guess, but I feel like his spoken word style it really resonated with me. The stuff he talked about on Ponder the Mystery, the whole things about the contradictions in humanity and worrying about mortality and like how much longer do you have. Like I thought it was very poignant, and Billy Sherwood, adding some additional vocals and also some great music, and there are lots of great guests on these songs. Billy being the big producer he is, and the connections he has, and like all these people who I'm sure, like some of them were like, oh yeah, I'd love to work with William Shatner. Um, and I'm not familiar with Shatner's other music albums. Obviously this isn't the only one he's done, but I thought it was fascinating. Like many of the tracks have stuck with me. I've listened to the original a bunch of times, and again, I say original because Ponder the Mystery was recently remixed and re-released as Ponder the Mystery Revisited. And like I said, the main difference, there might be some differences in the music here and there. So the way I re-listened recently is I listened to Revisited first, like all the way through. It had been a while since I listened to the original, and so I wanted to listen to that with fresh ears. And there were still some things I missed from the original while listening to Revisited. And so next I listened to each of the tracks like back to back. Like I'd listen to one version from that album and the other version from the other album. And then I listened to the original all the way through again. So yeah, the big difference, um, maybe some other people can point out little differences in the music, but the biggest difference is that Billy Sherwood's vocals are taken out. And also some of the song lengths are a bit shorter, typically by 20 seconds or 30 seconds, although there are a couple exceptions. And I know Yes fans listening to or watching this probably are already making the comparison to Fly From Here and Fly From Here Return Trip, replacing Benoit David's vocals with Trevor Horn's vocals. So yeah, that comparison definitely comes to mind, and I'll circle back to that. But I just want to go through each of the tracks and my impressions, um, listening to the revisited version and the original. And I was kind of trying to listen with more quote unquote objective ears and be like, well, do Billy's vocals need to be on this particular track or that particular track? And I remember a while ago when this remix was announced, one of our followers, Ray Reithmeyer, pointed out that, lots of fans of William Shatner maybe don't know who Billy Sherwood is. So maybe the revisited version is tailored more to them. And yeah, that thought came to mind recently to me as well. Ray said the revisited version seems like it's more like Shatner's oeuvre. I hope I pronounced that correctly. His other albums where it's mainly him. Whereas people like us, in prog rock, like we know Billy Sherwood, but we're in that very specific bubble. I love Billy's singing, so I'm very much attached to that on the original. So I could see how maybe the original is more for prog rock fans and Revisited is more for people who are just William Shatner fans, and maybe they're like, who's this other guy? Like, why can't it just be Shatner? So I'm curious, like, if anyone is coming from either of those directions. I saw a couple people say they came to this album as fans of both, um, and have only listened to the original. But anyway, so I gave Revisited, as I was listening, listening to that and then listening to the original again, I tried to be quote unquote objective, but it's kind of a silly word, but for lack of a better word, and trying to figure out like, could the vocals be removed from some of these songs, Billy's vocals, without changing drastically. So these are my impressions. So first we have Redshift, which is very instrumental. It's a very bombastic opening. There's not much of a difference, except it's just a little bit shorter. And then we got Where It's Gone, I Don't Know. And when listening to the revisited version of that, I could not help but think of, when Shatner says, I'm missing something, or where it's gone, I don't know. Like, I couldn't help but think that it could be a reference to Billy's vocals missing. Like, that was definitely what I was missing. So, that revisited version of that is very distracting to me because I can't help but think of the lack of Billy and how the words make me think of that. Then we get Manhunt, and this is one where I feel like objectively the additional vocals may not be needed there. Like they don't say as much substantially, so I could see how maybe that works fine with just Shatner. Um, I'm also like looking at like who else was on there. What the guests? All right, so I'll read the track list and say who some of the guests are. Sorry if I'm being all over the place, but Redshift. Hey, almost sounds like Yesshift. Where It's Gone, I Don't Know. Manhunt, which features Simon House. Ponder the Mystery, which features Steve Vai. There's also a music video of that title track on YouTube where you see Shatner and Sherwood in the desert. It looks pretty cool. Then you've got So Am I featuring Al Di Mayola. And then we have Change, which of course has Rick Wakeman. And Sunset, Twilight, features Edgar Winter, a great saxophone player there. Rhythm of the Night, which features Nick Turner. Imagine Things, which features Vince Gill. And then we have Do You See, featuring Edgar Froese, or Froese, I'm not sure how that's pronounced, I apologize. Deep Down, featuring Robbie Krieger. I'm Alright, I think, featuring Dave Coase. Where Does Time Go, featuring George Duke. And, George Duke contributed to the Ponder the Mystery. He contributed to this song here shortly before passing away. And then on Alive, you have Zootorn Rollo. Sorry, I'm double checking, seeing if there's like anyone else I need to mention. Let's see, just typing a bit, taking a look. Let's see. But yeah, those are like some interesting guests there. Okay. Right. So yeah, lots of great guests. But yeah, so you have Manhunt there. And like I said, that's one where maybe the additional vocals aren't needed. But then on the title track, Ponder the Mystery, I feel like Billy's vocals are essential. Like I love the collaboration between him and Shatner's voices on that. Um, so again, I'm missing that on the revisited version. Then we have So Am I, which might hit close to home for some people. Talks about a dog named Bucky and Shatner saying, like, basically saying, as I notice he's getting older, so am I. Like, I'm also getting older. And on the original version, you have Sherwood repeating, so am I, so am I. And in a way, I could see how it might take away the personal feel of just one man, Shatner dealing with this thought of how, like, his time is running out and the dog's time is running out. But on the other end of the spectrum, I can see how Sherwood repeating "so am I" could almost feel like there are multiple people each experiencing that same feeling and sort of reinforcing that. Like it's almost like an I am Spartacus moment in a way. So I could see two different ends of that. Then we have Change, and again, Rick Wakeman, very whimsical on the keys there. It's also very fitting because, Changes is also Bowie's song. Wakeman worked with Bowie, so there you go. Um, yeah, some of the words on this album really resonate with me. All things change and loss is gained. It really hits home when you're alone and just like thinking of like the weight of everything. Um, and I feel Sherwood repeating the word change is not very intrusive, but one could, I guess, take it or leave it. I think with some of these songs where Sherwood is only singing the song title as like a textural thing, I think one could argue that maybe it's not needed. And then you have Sunset. And again, I suppose one could take or leave Billy repeating the song title, but I quite like it as an added layer here, more so than on Change. Then we have Twilight, which again is wonderful saxophone. Um, and I don't think I've mentioned this before, but I feel like on the revisited version, I'm able to hear the music very well, but I was also able to hear the music very well in the original version. So on the original, I don't really think Sherwood's voice is drowning out the music. Um, it feels like, there's, I guess the intention was to put more of an emphasis on Shatner's spoken word and put that more in the forefront. So it's just his voice that you hear. And I'm sure people could draw comparisons to something like Dark Side of the Moon Redux, where Roger Waters, it seems like the intention was to focus more on his lyrics and but it's a vastly different approach. Waters added more lyrics and the music is completely re-recorded. It's more subdued, not as bombastic, the music. So this is definitely a different approach. With Ponder the Mystery, it's the same album just remixed and some things taken out. So, but yeah, that idea of focusing more on the person's words and putting that in the forefront, that just came to mind. And then we have Imagine Things. This is my favorite track on Ponder the Mystery. I with the revisited version, since Billy's vocals aren't there, I guess I was trying to like sing along to it a little bit. Imagine things that aren't there. Um, and it's such a great song. I feel like I do miss Billy on this one very much. Shatner repeats the same words, but it doesn't feel like Shatner and Sherwood like sing some of the same words just in different spots on the original, but it doesn't feel redundant that they're repeating what each other is saying. I can't really explain it. It just feels poignant. And the runtime for this one is almost the same, whereas some of the tracks, like I said, are like 20 or 30 seconds shorter for some reason. One of them has a fade out that it was So Am I. Like the revisited version had a fade out, and it's like, wait, I miss hearing the ending from the original. Um, but yeah, moving on, the next track, Do You See? Again, with the words like the past is a future and we're still going through it. There's some very poignant stuff on this album lyrically. Um, and there's some amazing fast paced soloing on this one. And I feel like repeating the song title in this case enhances Shatner's points. Um, like the repeating of Do You See doesn't feel redundant here. It feels like it reinforces and emphasizes what Shatner is talking about, when it comes to like the big picture stuff here. Then on Deep Down, this one kind of reminded me of the Twin Peaks theme song. Like it has the doo 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 doo. So I kind of wonder if maybe there's an influence there. Billy sings more than just the song title here, and is yeah, like, so because it's more than just a song title, this one definitely, like, I feel needs him on there. Then we have I'm Alright, amazing saxophone once again. And Billy's words are again not just the title. And then you have Where Does Time Go? The revisited version is a little more than half the original length here, so where did the time go? Indeed, just cut the track in half right there. Then you have Alive, and I miss Billy's vocals on there too. Like, the day is alive. Like, I miss that. It's like such a triumphant lair. And, either way, Shatner sounds so happy on that closing track. So I think for the most part, like, if I were to go to one of these only, I would go to the original version. Um, like I said, I feel like the original doesn't, the additional vocals do not drown out the music, in my opinion. Um, and the revisited version, maybe that's just more for people who want just Shatner and are coming into this as Shatner fans or Star Trek fans and not so much as prog rock fans or Billy Sherwood fans. But the original is definitely more to my speed. Now, another point I want to make here is that both of these versions, like the original Ponder the Mystery and Ponder the Mystery Revisited, they're both equally available to stream. Um, I don't know if it varies from country to country. I'm in the United States, but I'm able to listen to each album in full via the official channels on YouTube. The Cleopatra Records channel on YouTube has the original. You can stream that playlist. And the official William Shatner YouTube page has the revisited version in full. So one could listen to either one on those. Shatner also has a Bandcamp, but for some reason, a couple of the tracks are missing from there. Maybe like because there's one or two things exclusive to the CD version, at least upon initial release. So the YouTube channel seems to have everything. But yeah, even on the Cleopatra Records store, I think I saw both versions currently available on CD. Now, I'm sure over time, stock could change, but point is, like, at least from where I'm sitting, both versions of Ponder the Mystery are available to be listened to. And, I cannot help but ponder, haha, why that can't be the case for both versions of Fly From Here, the Yes album. Fly From Here Return Trip is the one that's available on all these streaming things officially. And I don't know if someone just needs to pick up the license for the original version. I don't know who one would need to talk to for that, if it's the band or if it's a label or a licensee or the management. Like, obviously, I don't know all the inner workings of this, but like, just the thing of having both versions of an album equally available, it's really nice. It's like with Star Wars, like, why can't all versions be available? The originals, the pre-special edition, the special edition, and all the tweaks since then. Like, why can't that be a thing? So it's just a bit of food for thought, I guess. um you know People can redo or remix their original creation, and there will be some mixed views and opinions on the approach. And I think it can really rub people the wrong way if something becomes unavailable and, like, the thing that replaced it is the only thing that's available. So it's really nice when multiple versions are equally available. And this is kind of a stray thought that I have, but I feel like when redoing or remaking an album or even a movie. Um, with Ponder the Mystery Revisited, I guess I was kind of expecting that maybe it could be vastly different. Like the main difference was the omission of Billy's vocals, and maybe there are differences in the music here and there, but I don't know. There's like a part of me that was wondering. I kind of wish if this was being redone that there had been a lot more differences musically, perhaps maybe even added some more additional lyrics and recontextualize the whole thing. Fly From Here Return Trip, there are little differences here and there that kind of change the thing. But like I think of movies, when and of course I should acknowledge that tribute albums are also a thing, and those are like a fun thing to do. Sometimes people will redo the songs exactly, or they'll put their own stamp on it. It kind of reminds me of movie studios. Like, if a fan makes their own recreation of a movie, then it's admirable because they put in their own effort to try to do it their own way, and it's sort of a love letter. Like I kind of think of toys live action Toy Story, this YouTube video, or Shrek Retold. But if a movie studio remakes something and it's shot for shot and there's not really much of a difference except maybe, I don't know, go from animated to live action or something, then there's not really much of a point if it's not drastically different because it's the same thing. So if someone is to redo and reshape something, like there's a part of me that kind of would appreciate like a bigger swing. Make it so that something is so different but still admirable that you do need to get both versions. Now, that's not to say that Revisited doesn't have an audience. I'm sure there, like I said, maybe some people who are not as familiar with Billy Sherwood, and maybe the original is more for them because it's more Shatner focused. But for me personally, I'm definitely prefer the original overall because while there are a few places where you could argue Sherwood's um, vocals are maybe not completely necessary if it's just repeating the song title, for the most part, there are like his vocals feel essential to me, like on most of the songs, definitely. So I really like the original because it feels like more of a collaboration. Um, but again, I'm glad that both of these versions are equally available, and I think that's something that lots of forms of art and the people who own them can strive for. But yeah, so that's my whole take on Ponder the Mystery. 10 years old today. The revisit version now month and a half, almost 2 months old. So yeah, and like I said, Yesshift will be back. My dad and I are planning on reviewing the new Trevor Rabin album Rio this coming Tuesday the 10th at 6 p.m. Pacific time. And sometime this week, like I mentioned, there will also be a news episode covering some of the prog stock stuff and also some other news that came out within the past week. So you can follow us at facebook.com/yesshift, where we'll post about what's coming up, and youtube.com/@yesshift, where we post the videos after we go live on Facebook. And if you're just on audio, anchor.fm/yesshift, or find us on various podcast apps. And you can write to us at yesshiftpodcast@gmail.com for any feedback and such. So, yeah, that's it for now. And I'll see you all soon. All right. Figure out how to turn this off. Um, okay, here it is. All right. Bye, everyone.